All right, this is the last problem that I'm going to make a video for you for today. It says a piece of blue yarn is 5 2/3 yards long. A piece of pink yarn is 5 times as long as the blue yarn. Bailey tied them together with a knot, that should say knot, I'll go back and fix that, a knot that used 1/3 yard from each piece of yarn. What is the total length of the yarn tied together? So I'm going to start off, let's try that again. So I'm going to start off by asking myself, what do I know about the problem? I know that I have blue yarn that is 5 2/3 yards long. I also know that the pink yarn is 5 times as long. Multiply by 5. Then there's this interesting other little step in here where it says Bailey tied them together with a knot that used 1/3 yard from each piece of yarn. I think that's going to become very important here very soon. So I'm going to keep those 3 things in mind. And I'm going to draw a picture of what I already know. So I'm going to come back and we're going to start with the blue yarn here. So I'm going to draw my little bee and I'm going to make this tape diagram actually, you know what, let's make it a little bit smaller here just because we're going to need to do this 5 times. So this represents 5 and this represents 2/3. Now my pink yarn here is going to be 5 times as long as this. So I'm going to need to do this 5 times. So I've done it once, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to label each of these so that I know what squares represent what. 5 2/3. So my question I need to find out is the total length of the yarn tied together. So I need to figure out at least how far this is. But I also remember that Bailey used 1/3 yard from each piece of yarn to tie them together. So I'm just going to kind of make a little note off to the side here. I'm just going to draw a little thing that says Bailey and that she used 1/3 from blue and she also used 1/3 from pink. So that I can just remember that that's what she ended up using. So I need to know what steps I need to take in order to answer the question. That was my 4th step. So I know that I need to figure out how long the blue and the pink were tied together. And then I know that I need to end up subtracting this equals 2/3, right? Because 1/3 plus 1/3 is 2/3. I need to subtract 2/3 from whatever I get to show that those 2/3 aren't in the length of the rope. Let's start off and look how many groups of 2/3 I ended up having. So I have one group right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I actually ended up with 6 groups of 5 2/3. So I'm going to do 6 times 5 2/3, which we know is the same as 6 times 5 plus 2/3. Don't forget your parentheses to show that they belong together. Then we do our distributive property is what we call this, where we do 6 times 5 and 6 times 2/3. We multiply 6 by both of them. 6 times 5, let's count by 5. 6 times 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We ended up with 30. 6 times 2/3. Let's see. I do 6 times 2, which is the same as 12/3. 12/3 is a fraction that's greater than 1. So remember, this is the same as 12 divided by 3. Oh, 12 divided by 3. We've made 3 groups out of 12 before. We end up with 4 in each group. So now I can take 30 plus 4 and add those together to get 34. But that's not my final answer, because remember, the question isn't what is the length of the rope altogether. We have to remember that Bailey tied a knot in them. And she used 1/3 of piece of yarn, or 1/3 of yard from each piece of yarn. So I'm going to need to come and I'm going to need to subtract 34 minus 2/3. Now the way we've done this in the past is to look at this and draw a model, but I don't want to draw 34 holes. That would just take a long time, and when I'm only subtracting 2/3, I don't really need to draw out 34 holes. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to split 34 into two numbers, and I'm going to go 33 and 1, because 33 plus 1 equals 34. And then I'm going to kind of just put the 33 off to the side for now and not worry about that just right now. And I'm just going to look at this one hole that we have right here. This 1 represents this one hole right here. And I'm going to split it into thirds because that's what I know. And I have the whole thing. But I need to subtract 2/3 from this. So I'm going to cross off 1/3, cross off another third. I'm left with 1/3 left in my model. That would be what would happen if I subtracted 1 from 2/3. Because isn't 1 really the same as 3/3? 1 is equal to 3/3, so isn't 3/3 minus 2/3? Doesn't that equal 1/3? So that's how you can look at a problem like this and do our subtraction, because then, oh, remember our 33 that we left over here? Let's bring our 33 back here. And we have 33, and then we'll bring our 1/3 back here. And 1/3. That is our total length of yarn tied together. So let's make sure that we write that in our sentence. The length of the yarn tied together, I know that kind of looks like yam, you know that it's yarn though, was 33 1/3 yards long. And there you go.